Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going?
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Come into our house of hope and love, of peace and justice, of wholeness and healing. We welcome the certain and the seeking, the lifers and the newcomers, the beloved and the brokenhearted, all of whom can find a home in our community, Throop Unitarian Universalist Church, where we go love the world from the heart of Pasadena. Our Jewish friends who celebrate are in the middle of their Hanukkah season, so today we will honor the Jewish tradition by exploring one of the Hebrew Scripture's most beloved wisdom books. Before we begin, I would like to mention that, also from the Hebrew Scriptures, and in the spirit of January's theme of creation stories, I will be leading a Bible study on the first 10 chapters of Genesis. It will be held here at Throop on Saturday, January 18th, starting at 4 p.m. More information and RSVP details can be found in Throop Tidings, and I hope to see many of you there. If you are new to Throop, please sign our online guest book. The link is in the order of worship or in the live stream chat. If you are physically present in the room, you can also fill out an info card found in the pew. If you do that, you can sign up to Throop Tidings, where you'll get the information about the Bible study. Place it in the offering plate later in the service, or you can just hand it to anyone who looks like they work here, like me. Welcome. It's a joy to celebrate with you all today. Each one of us is a light in the world. The flame from our chalice symbolizes and reflects that light.
Good morning. Our time together in worship is intimately connected with our daily lives. As a symbol of that connection, we light our chalice with a flame from our shared candles of hope and witness.
Right here and right now, we open our senses. Right here and right now, we open our senses to see know and believe that what we must do, to know and believe that what we must do is open our hearts to let all gifts flow through, is open our hearts to let all gifts flow through.
We light a second candle to honor the people and ancestors whose lands we now occupy. The land under and around Throop is the unceded land of the Gabrielino Tongva Band of Mission Indian people. May this knowledge and awareness lead us into dismantling systems of supremacies and oppressions. We light a third candle symbolizing our watershed, the Arroyo Seco. May their waters continue to nourish life in our communities. We take a moment of silence, holding all of these in our hearts.
Our next hymn is in the gray hymnals, Gathered Here, number 389. Please stand in body and spirit.
Gather here in one strong body, gather here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gather here in the mystery of the hour, gather here in one strong body, gather here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gather here in the mystery of the hour, gather here in one strong body, gather here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near.
All right, this is where we all walk around and greet each other. Let's say hi. Yes, no, you're right. This is an intern thing.
are doing it. Now you'll never get it back down. Gather here in one strong bond. Gather here in one strong bond. Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour. Gathered here in one strong body. Gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near.
Hello, everyone. You may be seated. My name is Nick D'Augusto. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the intern minister here at Throop. As a practice of inclusivity, my colleagues and I at seminary are trained to talk about our identities in specific and clear ways. As a white, cishet, endosex male, I'm endosex because I'm not intersex. I state these identities with awareness of the circles of privilege I occupy. For those listeners here or online, hello online, who might possess a disability regarding vision, I am 6'1", and I'm wearing a blue collared shirt and rust-colored pants. The eternal surrounds us. We're encased in the womb of its splendor. Our senses, attuned to the earth, make for gifts of mutual delight. With honor and respect, we pledge this promise to our planet. As members of the family of living beings on Earth, we are guided by the Unitarian Universalist principle of respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. With hearts filled with love for it, eyes nurtured by its beauty, and minds ruminating on ways to protect its sacred and scarce resources, we promise to nurture the well-being of all life and of the planet itself.
Now, in an effort to warm you up, we're going to do a little responsive reading, and the congregation's response will be, open our hearts and let our gifts flow through. Let's try that once together. Open our hearts and let our gifts flow through. These words are from The Blessing for Presence by John O'Donohue. Awaken to the mystery of being here and enter the quiet immensity of your own presence. Open our hearts and let our gifts flow through. Have joy and peace in the temple of your senses. Open our hearts and let our gifts flow through. Take time to celebrate the quiet miracles that seek no attention. Open our hearts and let our gifts flow through. May you experience each day as a sacred gift woven around the heart of wonder. Open our hearts to let our gifts flow through.
We have been weighed down by sadness like a stone, and we have yearned, that sometimes we feel so utterly alone, while we turn, and we've been stricken by the wonder of it all, stricken down. And sometimes we feel so faint we want to fall, overcome. But all in all, I'd say this year in flight together has been fun. What say we make one more circle round the sun? We have raised our fists in anger and we've tried to work it out, that we need each other, we cannot deny. There is no doubt, there is no doubt. So let us weave another dream in outer space while we're turning on this planet home that holds our human race. We're still learning, but all in all, I'd say this year in flight together has been fun. Let's say we make one more circle around the sun. I'd say this year in flight together has been a good one. What say we make one more circle? One more circle. What say we make one more circle around the sun?
Thank you, Malcolm. This would be a time where we would offer childcare to any little ones that are going to go out. Because it's holiday season, we actually don't have a formal childcare professional on site today, but the childcare rooms are open for any parents or people with little ones that would like to go out. So we're going to sing anyway, even if none of you leave. So this is what we would do for our kids right now who want to leave. But they can also stay and make noise, that's fine.
For you shall go out in joy, for you shall go out in joy, and come back in peace, and come back in peace. For you shall go out in joy, for you shall go out in joy. Blessed be.
This church is our church. We support it through our gifts of time, our gifts of talent, and our gifts of treasure. You can give online. The directions are in the order of worship. If you are here in the room, you can place your donation in the offering plate. Use the green envelope in the pew pocket for cash. And if you are a first-time visitor, please let the offering plate pass you by. Thank you for supporting our life together. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Where my free spirit onward leads, well, there shall be my way. By my own light illumined, I've journeyed night and day. My age or time-worn cloak I wear, as once I wore my youth. I celebrate life's mystery, I celebrate death's truth. My family is not confined to mother, maid, or your child, but it includes all creatures, be they tame or be they wild. My family upon this earth includes all living things, on land or in the ocean deep, or borne aloft on wings. The ever-spinning universe, well, there shall be my home. I sing and spin within it, as through this life I roam. Eternity is hard to ken, and harder still is this. A human life, when truly seen, is briefer than a kiss.
In a spirit of gratitude, we lift up our thanks to those supporting our worship service today. Brad, our live stream operator, Terry, our lay reader, Cynthia, our greeter, Tom, our coffee and conversation host, Malcolm, our music director, Fillory for administrative support, and Reverend Tara, who's not here today, for her guidance, leadership, and care, and trust that I would be able to handle this. So thank you, Tara. As we pause in recognition for all the ways we support our Throop community life, say with me the words in your order of service. With gratitude for the ministries of the church that hold us and emboldens us to love the world, we bless our offering and the many gifts we share. Our centering hymn is Dauna Naish, number 1032, 1032 in the green hymnal. You are human, not divine. Your task is to live life to its fullest. So listen to me, take my advice. Enjoy living as if every day were a feast day. Does this quote sound familiar to you? Here's another. At rich men's banquets, after dinner, a man carries round a wooden image of a corpse in a coffin, painted and carved in exact imitation, a cubit or 2 cubits long. This he shows to each of the company, saying, "Drink and make merry, but look on this, for such shalt thou be when thou art dead." Okay, one more. There is nothing worthwhile for a human but to eat and drink and afford themselves enjoyment with their means. All right, the first excerpt I read for you is from an ancient Egyptian story entitled "A Sufferer and a Soul in Egypt." Composed around 1800 BCE, it is one of many examples of ancient Egyptian, and thus ancient Near Eastern, literature that scholars have rediscovered, translated, and passed down to us today. Here's a short passage from the introduction to that story as found in the book Old Testament Parallels. Around 2100 BCE, the social world of Egypt came apart. Consequently, teachers began to reevaluate Egypt's worldview. A sufferer and a soul files a lawsuit against Egypt for its views on life and death. At the trial, the emotionally distressed sufferer is the attorney for death, and his soul is the attorney for life. The sufferer proposes committing suicide as an antidote to the pain and failure of his life. The soul argues that it is the task of the living to get on with life and that funerals are a waste of time for rich and poor alike. The soul proposes that the sufferer stop complaining and start enjoying life. A sufferer and a soul does not offer explanations for suffering. It simply wonders what the suffering should do. The second excerpt I read for you about the drinking party and the coffin with the face of the dead person on it is a story relayed to us firsthand by the renowned ancient Greek historian Herodotus, who was traveling in Egypt during the 5th century BCE. So here we have an ancient Egyptian philosophical through line stretching from 1800 BCE all the way to around 400 BCE that centers the reader's attention on the inexplicability of what it means to be alive, the inevitability of death, and the fact that humans can't do much about any of it besides committing themselves to enjoy living as if every day were a feast day. The third excerpt I read for you is from a book in the Hebrew Scriptures. In Hebrew, the book is titled Koheleth. Many of you are probably more familiar with the Christian Old Testament name for the book, as I was, which goes by the Greek translation Ecclesiastes. This book was composed somewhere around 400 to 300 BCE. So about the same time, Herodotus was getting hammered with rich Egyptians and hanging out with coffins that had pictures of dead people on them. My sermon today will focus on the book of Koheleth, centering its Israelite narrative. For some of you, revisiting this literature may give you pause. For others, it might make you recoil or fear being triggered in some way. I'd like to state that while I do raise up a passage for criticism in my sermon, I find the vast majority of this book worthy of reflection, and I hope to bring it to life for you. Nonetheless, please take care of yourself if you're feeling uncomfortable. In that spirit, let us take a moment for self-reflection, for a deeper breath, for a meditation in the style of your preference. For those of you who want something to ponder, you might ask yourself, when did I first learn about the Bible? Who were its messengers in my life? Is it more or less than a book? Why? The following song is Hine Matov, number 392 in the Gray Hymnal.
הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבט ההיא גייר. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבט ההיא גייר.
Koheleth. Koheleth is a man, a wealthy man, gathering experiential knowledge of the living world in the hopes of finding the source of wisdom. And in this practical pursuit of wisdom, Koheleth turns up many of the same hard-to-accept answers that his Egyptian forebears did, which I read to you earlier. Life is unfair. Doing good does not necessarily mean you will be rewarded. Doing bad does not necessarily mean you will be punished. One of the only things within our control is whether or not we have the capacity to celebrate the living of our lives amidst all of this unfairness, wickedness, and injustice. Can we eat and drink and find joy in a life of toil, hardship, and often meager means? After all of his searching, through his extraordinary pessimism, candidness, and doubt, Koheleth determines that eating and drinking and living joyfully is not only the essence of what it means to be alive, but the best way to please an incomprehensible God. Koheleth chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. Utter futility, said Koheleth. Utter futility. All is futile. What real value is there for a human in all the gains they make beneath the sun? One generation goes, another comes, but the earth remains the same forever. Just as the Egyptian society of 2100 BCE was in a state of turmoil, flux, and cultural self-reflection, so too was Israelite society at the time Koheleth was composed. In 586 BCE, after years of internal strife amidst a divided kingdom, Jerusalem was invaded, conquered, and destroyed by the Babylonian army. The temple in which the Israelites believed their God physically resided was completely demolished. The Babylonians, in an attempt to quell any future rebellions and incorporate their subjugated populations into their empire, exiled many of the Israelites to Babylon. But only about 45 years later, King Cyrus and the Persians conquered the kingdom of Babylon and instituted a sweeping new political and cultural framework for the region. With keen diplomatic savvy, the Persian monarchy incentivized the previously exiled peoples of Babylonia to return to their original lands and rebuild their communities, with the promise that the Persian monarchy would allow them to live and worship as they chose, as long as they respected Persian authority, and this the Israelites did. They returned to the land of Judah and began rebuilding what would be called the Second Temple in Jerusalem, but they would be without their own king. The Israelites would now be vassals to the Persian Empire, but they were vassals allowed to worship and live as they saw fit. This is what is referred to as the post-exilic era of Israelite history, life after the exile in Babylon. Israelites have returned to their homeland, but shifting theological ideas would arise out of the trauma of their previous devastation and loss. One of these new theological ideas would be expressed in the book of Koheleth, disillusionment. Koheleth, chapter 6, verses 10 through 12. Whatever happens, it was designated long ago, and it was known that it would happen. As for the human, they cannot contend with what is stronger than them. Often much talk means much futility. How does it benefit a person? Who can possibly know what is best for a person to do in life, the few days of their fleeting life? For who can tell them what the future holds for them under the sun? This book is complicated theologically. It laments the futility in trying to understand human life, the futility in trying to understand God. It rejects over and over again the idea that if a person lives a righteous life, that God will bless that person. Koheleth is looking around everywhere, desperate to find a trustworthy source for wisdom so that he can understand the meaning of life. Embedded in this pursuit is the uncomfortable fact that Koheleth doesn't seem to believe that the God of Israel holds the answer. Koheleth, chapter 7, verse 2. It is better to go to a house of mourning than to a house of feasting, for that is the end of every person, and a living one should take it to heart. One of the most ancient practices we have as humans for living in and celebrating the present moment is the practice of meditating daily upon our own inevitable death. As I mentioned, it's been an ancient part of our human ritual since at least as far back as the Egyptians, but it's possible and probable that this type of sentiment could have been a part of human oral tradition long before the advent of writing in the 3000s BCE, as humans had been farming the land and civilizing themselves in ever-growing scales as far back as the year 10,000 BCE. I was introduced to this idea through the Catholic tradition, where it goes by the Latin name memento mori, which translates into English as remember you must die. The point of this reminder isn't to be morbid or promote fear, but to inspire, motivate, and clarify a person's living present. As Socrates was recounted as saying in Plato's Phaedo, which, like Koheleth, was written around 400 BCE, the one aim of those who practice philosophy in the proper manner is to practice for dying and death. Koheleth, the Egyptians, and Socrates stand as antecedents to the idea of memento mori, an idea that further blossomed in the fertile philosophical ground of Rome during the age of the Stoics, and later found a natural fit in the Roman Catholic Christian tradition, which would have both intuitively understood Roman philosophy as well as revered Ecclesiastes as sacred scripture. And just as an interesting anecdote, there is a crypt underneath a church in Rome, which includes 6 chapels, 5 of which are covered in the skeletal remains of former monks. The crypt was built in the 1630s, and an estimated 4,000 skeletons from the Middle Ages decorate the insides of the various chapels. And a plaque in one display in the crypt reads, "What you are now, we once were. What we are now, you shall be." I mean, I love that. Though Koheleth was not so explicit in his recommendations on how to incorporate the daily reminders of death into a person's life, it is clear that Koheleth calls us to forego temptations that blind us from seeing our reality as it truly is. In fact, what Koheleth is calling us to do seems almost contradictory. Drink and be merry, on the one hand. On the other, mourn with those who are grieving. But I think it's better to see these as two truths he's calling us to hold in tension. Death is terrible. What happens to all of us? Life is incomprehensible, but we need to celebrate it nonetheless. Don't go too far, Koheleth seems to be saying. Don't forget how fragile life really is. Bring food, drink, and mirth to those in your life who need it. Don't look away. Be present with the people in your life who are mourning. The fact is, you'll probably be doing the same thing very soon. Koheleth, chapter 7, verses 23 through 26. All this I tested with wisdom. I thought I could fathom it, but it eludes me. The secret of what happens is elusive and deep, deep down. Who can discover it? I put my mind to studying, exploring, and seeking wisdom and the reason of things, and to studying wickedness, stupidity, madness, and folly. Now I find woman more bitter than death. She is all traps. Her hands are fetters, and her heart is snares. He who is pleasing to God escapes her, and he who is displeasing is caught by her. Yeah. Eesh. This is the criticism part. I raised up this quote to remind everyone that this book is not perfect. Once again, we see the repulsive misogyny that can arise within the Bible. For me, unabashedly patriarchal lines like this one bring back to the forefront of my mind just how much hate, violence, judgment, and oppression has been fueled by specific passages in the Bible. Oppressions carried out against other humans, yes, but also other animals, plant life, and even the earth itself. But people who utilize the Bible in this way are cherry-picking passages out of an ancient, pre-scientific compilation of writings that span 1,000 years of cultural and religious thought, and that's not even including the New Testament, nor all the writings that came after the canonical books of the Bible, the Jewish Mishnahs, or the Talmud, or the saints, or any of the mountains of theological and philosophical volumes that have emerged out of these ancient traditions. The Bible is written, often pseudonymously, by many hands, in many contexts, at many stages of Israelite history. It repeats itself. It contradicts itself. The books are ordered differently depending on one's tradition, and most are narratives, with authors regularly choosing embellishment for narrative effect rather than remaining dedicated to some literal historical truth. It's infuriating and terrifying to see people using these books to sanctify a wide spectrum of modern oppressions with it. And these feelings make it justifiably hard to engage with this literature again. I don't blame you if this stuff is too toxic to want to touch. But for me, in addition to it frankly just being a requirement for my degree, I realized, thank you, I realized I had to find a way to honor these stories again for myself, to love them in the ways that I could. Yes, partly because the Bible was embedded in me as a child, but also because many people still revere it, and because its influence on the Euro-Western world, the global world, and world history is immense. Again, I'm not trying to convince you to love the Bible. It takes a lot of work to contextualize it, and there's a lot to criticize. Even in Koheleth, I have multiple criticisms I don't have the time to mention. But if you are interested in checking out this story or another story in the Bible again, please remember that this book is a product of its time. We can take what we want from it and set aside the sections that no longer serve us or make sense. We get to interpret these stories according to our modern context, just as these writers did in their time with the stories that preceded them. Koheleth, chapter 9, verses 7 through 10. Go, eat your bread in gladness and drink your wine in joy, for your action was long ago approved by God. Let your clothes always be freshly washed, and your head never lack ointment. Enjoy happiness with a partner you love all the fleeting days of life that have been granted to you under the sun, all your fleeting days. For that alone is what you can get out of life, and out of the means you acquire under the sun. Whatever it is in your power to do, do with all your might. In 2012, I met the woman who would become my wife, and that began the most joyful, celebratory, and lucrative 6 years of my life. Our love blossomed. We married in 2015 and had our son in 2016. I was working a bunch as an actor. Even the immediate future felt like it promised exponential growth. When the best job of my career concluded in 2018, I thought it was the beginning of my next great acting chapter and journey. I was not prepared for what came in its place. Years of unemployment, a psychological and emotional freefall, and a total rupture in my sense of self-identity. I mention this only to state that I am grateful for what life has brought me under the sun, the many incomprehensible, unpredictable things I have received under this sun. I was living in a cloak of privilege, and I did not truly understand at the very depth of my being how great my fortune was, how truly great my life was and is under this sun. All of this self-realization, this genuine transformative change, was a result of many unwanted things I received from this elusive universe, things I fought against for many days and months and years with utter futility. Koheleth speaks to me. At the end of a hard day, and with the approach of a tomorrow that may not seem to hold hopes of anything better, we are called by the Spirit of life to sit, to drink something, to eat something, and celebrate at the very least that we are alive, that we can taste some goodness in the world and feel the good effects of a refreshing drink, a full belly, and the nearby laugh of a loved one. Koheleth, chapter 11, verses 7 and 8. How sweet is the light. What a delight for the eyes to behold the sun. Even if a person lives many years, let them enjoy themselves in all of them. We are alive today. We are living in a time not unlike the ancient Egypt or ancient Israel mentioned earlier, a time of disillusionment. For the Jewish people, the Palestinian people, their region, their diasporas, it is once again a time of incomprehensible destruction, of ancient hatreds, of ceaseless horrors that seem forever doomed to repeat themselves. For all of us, it is a very serious time. And yet there is coffee in Throop Hall. And it's Pasadena. Pretty sure the sun is shining. Let's take a moment to acknowledge the presence of one another, and later to feel the sun's rays on our skin. We have the privilege to think about futility today, how maddening it can be, and at the same time, how its limits can help us turn and find a new direction. Or maybe you just want to drink the coffee and feel the sun. That's fine too. It's your moment. For our closing hymn, Malcolm will lead us in singing a song inspired by a passage from Koheleth, chapter 3, verses 1 through 8, Turn, Turn, Turn by the Byrds. Lyrics can be found in your order of service.
Nick.
Oh yeah, and stand in body and spirit if you feel like it.
To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace. A time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time for love, a time to hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven.
Place a hand on your heart. Reach out a hand to someone else in the room. The flames from our chalice and our candles are extinguished. Their light lives on in each of us. The flames binding our community as they empower us to reach toward justice. Go celebrate your life. And by doing so, inspire others to do the same. Amen. Blessed be. Aww. Thanks, Malcolm.
Should old acquaintance be